Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel where we discuss all things TV. I'm your host, TV Tantrum. Today marks the halfway mark in our journey through the Arkham series, and let me say it has been a lot of fun revisiting these games. This was my first introduction to Batman as a kid, besides the early movies with Christian Bale. And yeah, if you're lucky enough to have this series be your intro to Batman, you are one of the spoiled kids, considering most nowadays have to sit through the new Batman movies as their entertainment. But anyways, after the release of Arkham City, Rocksteady knew they couldn't just stop here, so they began working on this new project, Arkham Knight. However, it was very clear to them that this was going to be a complicated game, and they knew they would need time to refine their combat and predator system, along with adding a story that made sense and was entertaining. Voice recording, animations, map developing, character designing, writing dialogue, and so much more. So to at least give something to their fans, Rocksteady teamed up with WB Games in order to create a filler game while Rocksteady worked on the last game, and also wanted WB to test a few things with their game so they could have an idea on how it might work in Arkham Knight. So WB began production on the game. WB would be creating a prequel to Arkham Asylum because if there's one thing we can take from the Star Wars franchise, it's that prequels are a great idea. WB needed to create a game quickly and to the standard of the Arkham franchise. And even though they were granted temporary rights to produce an Arkham game, WB was given free range to do whatever they wanted. According to Rocksteady, WB was told to make the game they wanted, but to be careful to not step on Rocksteady's toes. Basically meaning that make sure your game doesn't break continuity or lore. WB creating Arkham Origins to be a prequel was going to be the best decision they could make, since by creating a prequel, they would have access to a lot more and sum it up to being before Arkham Asylum. WB's Arkham Origins revolved around Batman in the beginning of his career. At this time period, he had only donned the cowl for no more than 2 years, and was very much still learning. This bleeds into the game by Batman's fighting style being much more loose and brutal. His dialogue is much more of a younger, angrier Bruce, and his suit even reflects that by being much bulkier and armored, whereas later in years he will switch that out for a refined version of the suit to allow for more flexibility. Even Alfred is still coming to terms with Bruce's new lifestyle, in contrast to how we see him react later on, which is really cool to see not only Bruce evolve, but those around him as well. The stealth in this game is essentially the same as it was in Arkham City, but with new enemies added into the mix like the martial artists, which can only be hit by countering them. I haven't talked a lot about the different enemy types in the games, but I thought these guys were worth mentioning. The story of Arkham Origins revolves around Black Mask hiring 8 assassins to kill Batman in one night. The assassins are Killer Croc, Deathstroke, Firefly, Copperhead, Deadshot, Executioner, Shiva, and Bane. Killer Croc is the first assassin you meet once you exit Blackgate Prison, and whose boss fight is something very similar to the Titan fights from City and Asylum, but with an extra twist of him hurling these containers at you. He goes down pretty easily and is the first to reveal that there are other assassins. Deathstroke comes for you once you encounter Penguin, and is without a doubt my second favorite boss fight in the entire Arkham series. Deathstroke proves that in hand-to-hand combat he is more than an equal for Batman. While other villains attempt to take down the Masked Crusader with overwhelming strength, intelligence, poison, fire, ice, basically any way you can think of. This is where Deathstroke stands apart from his peers. Deathstroke challenges Batman man to man, matching Batman's skills with his own. Deathstroke is a dangerous opponent and even has the potential to wipe out the entire Justice League. And no, that's no joke. Deathstroke's fight contains some of the best combat I have ever seen, and while a few of his moves are pulled straight from the Ra's al Ghul fight from City, it's still one of the best fights in the entire franchise. Firefly will meet you on the infamous bridge that separates the two sections of the map, and is also responsible for all of your headaches when traveling through here. It is so annoying. Firefly sets the entire bridge ablaze and has bombs planted everywhere along it. His fight is pretty cool but repetitive, and other than that, there's not much else to say to his character. Copperhead will ambush you once you find Black Mask, who was kidnapped by the Joker. She is extremely flexible and has claws with poison on them. She also uses her flexibility to her advantage when in combat, quite literally slithering around her opponents. Her boss fight mainly consists of hallucinations and trying to find your way through this heavy green fog. The atmosphere of this boss fight makes you feel trapped and like you're the prey. The entire time Alfred is trying to get a cure for you, but once you have the cure, the fight is basically over for Copperhead. Deadshot's boss fight is a side mission within the game. You begin by investigating crime scenes and then are able to pinpoint his location. I've also avoided this in the past, but this series touches a lot on Batman's detective side, which is awesome. Batman is more than just a fighter, he is also the world's greatest detective. And I did not mention it before, even while the other games did touch on that, because I was saving it for a big discussion in Arkham Knight. But anyways, once you have completed the crime scenes, you'll decode a message and find Deadshot. His fight is a Predator mission, and he has a huge health bar that must be slowly taken down. Very similar to the Two-Face boss fight within our city when you are Catwoman, he is also surrounded by armed thugs patrolling everywhere. Executioner finds you once you are trying to find Penguin, and let me say, this fight was awesome. Okay, yeah, you saw that right. He goes down in one punch. But his fight isn't really for the purpose of a boss fight, it's mainly just an excuse so later on he can use his electric gauntlets. Shiva is also just a side mission as well, and isn't really there to kill you, but to test you for the League, which will eventually come back later in Batman's career. And last but certainly not least is Bane. Now, Bane is not only an assassin, but literally a main villain. Bane and Joker are actually the main villains and are both there for the same reasons: revenge. Now, I will not talk about Joker yet, but Bane I will. Bane isn't technically there for revenge, but in Bane's backstory, he was in prison, and during that time he had nightmares about bats and was petrified of them. Once coming to America and finding out about Batman, he vows to kill him and have peace. Bane is a unique character in that he can beat Batman just simply using overwhelming strength and intelligence. Bane's intelligence was not really shown during Asylum or City, but Bane is really smart in the comics, and Origins did him right. Bane has a few boss fights over the course of the game, but the very last one is by far the best. He takes a new form of Titan and becomes huge and has then the scariest fight in the entire franchise. During this fight, you will have lost access to your detective mode and are in these sharp corridors and can only use vents in the side of the wall. Should you be at the vent and Bane comes around, you'll be pulled out and thrown across the hall. Batman Arkham Origins has quite a bit of boss fights, and while most of them were cool, that is really all the game has to offer. The map is poorly done and with no life at all, and no details were added to any of the buildings. Combat and Predator missions are the same as City, and with just one exception, the enemies are the same as well. And animation seemed to be off quite a bit. Lip syncing was really off during certain scenes, and the story wasn't really doing anything special. Once you add all of these together, you have an average game that just needs rework to everything. While in my opinion, it is the worst of the Arkham games, it is still worth playing. This game is still fun and cool, overall with some interesting boss fights, and I do recommend that you pick it up. Well, with all that out of the way, I have nothing else to say, so thank you for watching, and join me next time when we discuss Batman Arkham Knight.